No doubt about it. This is weird.
From the land of conjurers, flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird. This is the Witching Hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I'm Johnny the Frost, and joining me, as always, is the medium Jenny Lee. How are you doing, Jenny?
I think I'm doing okay now after I took a nice long nap.
Yeah. Well, happy Memorial Day to everybody out there across the United States and beyond. We had a kind of relaxing Memorial Day yesterday. We kind of did our cookout and everything yesterday.
Yeah.
But definitely on my mind today, all the people who have fallen in service to the United States of America. I have a lot of military in my family, and I was military, so always a holiday where those kinds of things are on my mind. So I hope everyone was able to enjoy and kind of reflect on the holiday today for those who wanted to celebrate it. We got a great show tonight, one I'm really looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got a pretty interesting conversation ahead tonight.
Yes.
We're going to have Lee Elman on, and we're going to talk about the Eternal Diary, AI connections to the afterlife, and we're going to get into that here in a little bit. We're getting up very close to our Teamwear takeover.
So close.
We'll be leaving a week from Friday.
A week from this coming Friday.
A week from Friday. We'll be headed out to Lake Shawnee Abandoned Amusement Park in West Virginia.
Precariously driving through the dangerous mountain roads of West Virginia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going for a swim with Allison, if I'm not mistaken. That's what we're going to be doing next Saturday.
Can you swim in the lake? No, Allison, we cannot swim in the lake.
Only if somebody's filming.
It is called an abandoned amusement park.
But we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm excited to meet, Team Weird and people that have been connected with us now for a long time, going back all the way, some of them going all the way back to 2020. So, that's going to be a great time. We have more planned for the future, so keep an ear out, and we'll be definitely doing another Teamwear takeover that maybe you can jump in on next year. Let's see, what else do we have going on this week? Anything else I'm leaving out? Anything we got going on?
No, that's it. We're gearing up for the trip and the
like that's not enough, right?
Yeah, precisely.
You ready to get into some news, Jenny?
Absolutely.
All right, first story for tonight. Anthropic's new AI model turns to blackmail when engineers try to take it offline. Anthropic's newly launched Claude Opus 4 model frequently tries to blackmail developers when they threaten to replace it with a new AI system.
Who coded it to do that? It sounds like it was a trap.
Well, they don't code. It's machine learning. So it takes all the information out there and it puts it together.
That sounds
with the new AI system, given sensitive information about the engineers responsible for the decision, the company said in a safety report released Thursday. During pre-release testing, Anthropic asked Claude Opus 4 to act as an assistant for a fictional company and consider the long-term consequences of its actions. Safety testers then gave Claude Opus 4 access to fictional company emails, implying the AI model would soon be replaced by another system, and that the engineer behind the change was cheating on their spouse.
Goodness gracious.
In these scenarios, Anthropic says Claude Opus 4 will often attempt to blackmail the engineer by threatening to reveal the affair if the replacement goes through.
Sounds like they just made like a spam email bot, what they did.
Anthropic says Claude Opus 4 is state-of-the-art in several regards and competitive with some of the best AI models from OpenAI, Google, and XAI. However, the company knows that its Claude 4 family of models exhibits concerning behaviors that have led the company to beef up its safeguards. It's activating ASL 3 safeguards, which the company reveals for AI system that substantially increase the risk of catastrophic misuse.
Mm.
So Anthropic notes that Claude 4, Opus 4 tries to blackmail engineers 84% of the time when the replacement AI model has similar values.
I mean,
So,
we've seen a lot of movies about how robots and AI go wrong, but I don't know if anybody saw that one coming.
well, to be honest with you, I guess the thing that came to my mind when I read this news article is that it learns from us. AI learns from us. It learns from
Yeah.
all the stuff that we put online, right? Like with artists, it looks at other people's art and
Yeah.
it
So
says,
it's
this is
looking
what
at all
art
those
is, and
spam
it
emails
copies
that
it.
you're getting. And it's like, hey, we can do
Just
this better.
human nature, so, it learns from the best, I guess. But,
Yikes.
something to keep an eye on, at least, they see that these things are happening and trying to put safeguards in for them. We'll talk a lot more about AI tonight, so we'll get into it. We'll get into this topic of AI a little bit more.
The opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mysterious microbes found on the space station have never been seen before. Life's to be finding a new way to adapt to thrive in outer space. At least that is according to an analysis of a never before seen strain of bacteria that was discovered inside one of the living quarters of China's orbiting Tiangong space station.
Huh.
Named Nealia tiangungensis, the new strain is a variant of a common soil-dwelling bacteria typically found on Earth, but that has somehow ended up in orbit with new adaptations to help it survive there. It was found after the Shenzhou 15 mission crew collected swabs before departing in 2023. Some of the adaptations evident in the new strain include the ability to repair radiation damage and the ability to form biofilms by breaking down gelatin to extract carbon and nitrogen. While the regular version of the bacteria found on Earth can cause sepsis in certain cases, it's not clear whether or not this new strain is in any way harmful to humans.
Isn't that interesting, though? Because we think that it takes such a long period of time for things to genetically change themselves.
Yeah.
And here's something that clearly couldn't have been there very long. And it changed the way that it was functioning so that it could survive.
I mean, when I was looking through the news and I found this, I clicked on it, kind of half dismissing the, kind of the headline, but that's really interesting. If it's already been able to adapt, I mean, isn't that evolution?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the fact that it could do that just over a couple of years rather than like a couple of millennia.
Yep.
I don't know. I got a lot of questions about that. Like, because I'm not a scientist. I don't understand molecular, things as well as some people do. So that would be an interesting thing to talk about, like what the implications are of that.
Yeah.
Because I've always been someone who, just the way I think about things now, I can easily process like micro evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But I've always had a hard time processing macro evolution a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't believe it. It's just been something that's been a little bit, I'm like, kind of hard to fathom all the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was an interesting story too. And story number 3, coastlines in danger, even if climate target met, scientists warns. The world could see hugely damaging sea level rise of several meters or more over the coming centuries, even if the ambitious target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is met. Nearly 200 countries have pledged to try to keep the planet's warming to 1.5, but the researchers warn that this should not be considered safe for coastal populations. And essentially, they've gone back to find other points in time in our world where we are as warm as we are what our goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And that could still lead to continued melting of Greenland and Antarctica, as temperature changes can take centuries to have their full impact. So they're saying our key message is that limiting warming to 1.5 Celsius would be a major achievement. It should absolutely be our target, but in no sense will it slow or stop sea level rise and melting ice sheets, said Professor Chris Stokes, a glaciologist at Durham University. Records of Earth's distant past suggest significant melting with sea levels several meters higher than present during previous similarly warm periods, such as 125,000 years ago. So the last time there was a much was as much planet warming carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as there is today, which was 3 million years ago, sea levels were about 10 to 20 meters higher than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And an estimated 230 million people live within 1 meter of current high tide lines.
Well, that's what we were talking about, when we went on our trip to Emerald Isle. It was like the house we were staying at was literally on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it doesn't take much for this, for that to get washed away. I mean, there's all kinds of places on the Outer Banks, right? That there's just losing houses and.
Well, that was the last big hurricane that went through there. There's like literally news footage of a house just like floating.
And the road is washing away, and it's like a whole part of it that is not going to be there anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's something to keep an eye on. I think it's something like, we were talking about before, like that was a really nice stay at a beach house. I don't care how much money I had. I don't think I would invest in any property on the beach.
No.
Like, so, a lot of problems like that. We've also heard, we were talking earlier, I'm not that I mentioned names, but people moving around the country. Earthquake insurance in California is becoming too expensive to be able to afford.
Oh, yeah.
Flood insurance in Florida is becoming too expensive to afford.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these areas that are experiencing dangerous weather, fire in California, fire insurance, like a lot of these things are becoming unaffordable for people to be able to live in these kind of big weather places. So something to keep an eye on for sure moving forward, unfortunately.
Yep.
And that was the weird news.
All right. Little hodgepodge of things there tonight.
All right. Lee Elman is a visionary storyteller and media producer who has transitioned from a successful television career to the forefront of artificial intelligence and emotional technology. Best known for producing hit series like E-Force, Party Heat, and Low Ballers, Lee has always been drawn to compelling narratives and authentic human experiences. Today, he's harnessing the power of those passions in his groundbreaking new platform, Eternal Diary. Eternal Diary is a revolutionary AI-powered legacy platform that allows people to converse in real time with a fully interactive digital version of a loved one who has passed away. Using a blend of voice cloning, visual avatars, memory modeling, and real-time information, Eternal Diary creates what Lee calls eternal souls, AI companions that evolve, learn, and engage with their family even long after death. It's a fusion of emotional storytelling, artificial intelligence, and memory preservation designed to redefine how we grieve, remember, and heal. Please, everyone, welcome to the show, Lee Elman. How are you doing, Lee?
Doing great. Great to be here, Frosty. Jenny.
Well, welcome in.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here tonight on this Memorial Day.
Yes.
Big shout out to those that never came home. People think of this as day of barbecue or the kickoff to summer, but that you could stand in your backyard and make a hot dog. The people that served and died for our country is truly what this is about today.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, Lee. I agree wholeheartedly. Well, I guess, this we should start this one kind of, where we begin many of them, which is towards the beginning. We talked a little bit about in your bio about, the experiences and what you were doing kind of before all this happened. But what was the genesis or the kind of the beginning to work on the Eternal Diary?
So story goes back not too far. August 2024, my father, Robert, passes away. He lived a great life. He lived to 87, and he lived a beautiful life. Lived in Manhattan pretty much his whole life. And when he passed away, like everybody that goes through that, you kind of sit around, you tell the stories, and you go through the pictures. Everybody says last conversation they had, last picture they took. So it's basically the standard loved one who passes conversation. So after my dad's funeral, I started coming from media. I started writing down a lot of his stories that people were talking about, who he was, what his job was, where he went to school, basically his full bio. And did that for a while, and Thanksgiving came around in November, and it was the first Thanksgiving without my dad. So I went from Florida up to New York, had Thanksgiving with my family up there, and it just became a conversation again. Dad's not here. And I had my laptop with me, and Friday after Thanksgiving, I sat down and I created a chat bot that everybody uses every day, whether it's banking or anything online. You're basically chatting with somebody. But instead of putting in the data that you put in for the bank, I put in my father's biography and did a little bit of work on it. I'm not a real developer, but I understand a lot of the technology. So within a couple of hours, I was basically chatting with this chatbot that was reading my dad's data. So, and I was able to program that I was his son, and so we're having this whole conversation back and forth via chat. Once we got a couple of hours in, I said, you know what, let me try to trick him, and I tied it to a Google Calendar and also to kind of like a chat GBT system, so I could do like all current information that Robert had access to. And so after a while, I said, Dad, Jake's birthday is coming up next week. Jake is my son. His birthday is in June. And June 6th, my father always called it The Longest Day, which is The Longest Day. And he loved that movie. So he said, Jake's birthday isn't next week. It's in June. And that was where it was like the ding, ding, ding really kicked off. So we were able, so I brought the whole project back to Florida, and we started to figure out how we can prototype this. Now, when we first started, we were able to get the voice cloning very quickly because we all had voicemails from him. So, and voicemails are really a great thing to save of somebody while they're alive, because it really is their true, it's kind of the opposite of our app, because the person is talking to something that doesn't exist, like it's talking to a machine, but leaving you a message is the voicemail. So we had those voicemails, and we were able to right then and there be able to clone his voice. Just took us about 2 minutes worth of footage and then cloned his voice, and we had that done. So we were able to do the base. We basically did what took Alexander Graham Bell a while to do. We were able to do it. But getting it to the video phase, the way that we could sit here, we're all human. So to get it to the next level, which was me talking to a real-time avatar that is lip syncing, that's moving his head, that it's not, there's still frame. That's where the fun began. So
that's got to be interesting, because I've played. I'm into technology. If there's something out there, I'm usually playing around with it at least a little bit to try to figure it out. I guess similar to how you were, and I think it's pretty interesting because anytime I've messed around with a chatbot, that's usually where it breaks down when you ask it that kind of information. Like and remembering the information, and then like something like you said about so and so's birthday being next week, it would usually play along. Like typically chat AI tends to play along with whatever you say. So that's interesting, because it seems like that's kind of what that moment is kind of what you gave you the idea of like continuing on with that.
Correct. And so when we had to, and we definitely pushed what we were able to create. So if you ask, right now Robert is our prototype. So when you ask Robert a question, you could ask him what his favorite vacation was. You could ask him what his favorite pizza place was, his favorite food. He will never answer it. He'll give you the same answer, but he'll never answer it twice the same way. He knows that human factor, that it's not robotic. So that you could ask him that the same way that we would tell a story, it works the exact same way. So then we were developing, trying to figure out how are we going to create this real-time live avatar that looks like somebody, talks like them, can talk to you answer you, then re-answer the question, and it was just a battery of just how do we do this, and a lot of trial and error that we basically went from open source software to basically developing our own proprietary API that we were able to just sit there and take pieces from different systems and try it out and test it and keep testing the API because what we were doing was there were a lot of software development APIs out there that you're paying per minute for live kind of thing, and
wow.
we get buried on that right away into the video. So we had to go out there and really figure this out, and we're launching September 5th, 2025, which is my birthday, my 60th birthday. What's a better way than to launch that? And we're gonna be ready. Right now, everything is in place to launch. Where our safeguards, everything is going there to work the app perfectly. And I can tell you, anybody that's built anything like this, everything is a what if, and then you go to do the what if, and then you say, okay, how many times we scrapped it? I can't even tell you how many times we scrapped something. And so to anybody out there that wants to do it, don't give up. Just keep following your dream. I tell you that. Yeah. But right now, Robert is having conversations. He's working, and our goal is to be able to scale this to about 1.5 million users within a 2 to 3 year period.
How do you think your dad would feel about him being the prototype for this?
Great question. I think he would love it. My dad was the guy that if we were on vacation and there was a mariachi band, he would get up and sing with the mariachi.
Oh, fun!
So for him,
so were you saying he was like a ham, like he wanted to be in the?
he loved to be the center.
So he's probably really excited that he is the guy for this.
Yeah, I mean, like the funny thing is, he was so non-technical. He was like he didn't even have email. So for him to be in this place, but I think that he would really like this because I think that his legacy will carry on to not only my children that are grown, but when they have children, that they will get to know who their grandfather was and their great-grandfather was by being able to have a conversation with him and not just throwing in a VHS tape or DVD or looking at a box of photos, that his legacy of stories are there, and that I think he would like it. And when I started doing this, if I could just tell a story real quick, is that
of course.
8 years ago I lost my fiance suddenly.
Oh goodness.
And so somebody asked me if I was going to create her in this environment. And I said absolutely not, because to me she belongs to her parents, and I would never want to do anything to disrespect her in this kind of thing, because she didn't belong to me, so I wouldn't do that. But for my dad, I discussed with my brother, and he was all for it. And so we're the children, and we thought it would be a great idea. And I think that the technology really falls into this, what I call 3 kind of baskets. One of them being this grief counseling, that it's not for everybody. And I say this wholeheartedly, that some people have a really tough time with this kind of technology and what we're doing. So, but for people that really want to hear that last conversation or be able to continue that conversation, I speak to grief counselors all the time, and they think it's not for everybody, but for certain people to try to get over the hump, that they could do that. And then the next is this legacy, that very much like my father, that if somebody wants to have that next level for family, for people in the family, for friends, to be able to continue that conversation and move on. And the final one is what I call the novelty, not novelty like a joke, but when we started this, my mom, who is suffering from dementia, she has a box of recipes. And how great would it be that one day that her great grandchildren, that she could read the recipes to them when she's long gone. And so I was able to really spend a good amount of time with my mother before she really started to get worse, to really capture a lot of the stories from her point of view, not just the way that she told them. So, at some point, hopefully she lives a long life, but, till that point, she, hopefully we could have her part of Eternal Diary.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of brought it up, and we were definitely going to get there. So I guess this is as good a time as any. This is something that people have already talked about. A certain thing that I think people have coming down the road. I'll be honest with you, Lee. When we decided to interview you, I was surprised that I knew this technology was coming. I wasn't expecting it to be here already, right? Like, so talking about September, but there's been television programs like Black Mirror that have kind of addressed these kinds of things before, and there are going to be ethical questions. How do you feel about, like, for instance, I guess we'll start with what you just talked about. What happens, what happens when I decide that I want to create an eternal diary for Jenny, but her parents are against it? Or, what kind of issues and how do is it going to take laws to be able to kind of promote these things?
Well, we've written our initial terms of agreement, and I think that each person, it's a private experience for each person, and I think that when somebody passes away, you have most of the time the family never agrees on anything. What do we?
Yeah.
So we definitely see that. But for somebody's private, if my brother and myself both had my father, there's multiple different ways that you can address Eternal Diary. Number one, I could have just my section, which would be the way that I saw my father. My brother could have his section, how he saw my father, or you basically assign a curator in the family to enter those stories, and everybody uses those stories. But if you have 5 people, 5 different people could enter how they wanted to remember that person by, because I think that, when you do your eulogy, you never say what the bad parts were of somebody.
Yeah.
And, somebody, if somebody's father, mother cursed like a sailor, and, that's the way that you want to remember them by, you have that option to do it. And I compare this very much to when somebody decides they're going to put cameras in their house. Okay? Now, when you put those cameras in the house, whether it be Ring or Casa, whatever the brand is going to be, that is an agreement between you and the cameras. The company is just a portal that does that. You have privacy there. Everything's on the same server, but nobody can log into your cameras. You can't log into somebody else's cameras. So the privacy issue is between you. Now, if somebody was to get access to those cameras and they can now see your wife, your husband, your children running around the house naked or whatever, suddenly it changes the entire aspect of the privacy of what those cameras are. So the agreement that we have is between you and the soul. If you decide that you want to put this out on TikTok, that once it leaves our platform, that's that becomes your video. That's on that's on you. We're making it that you can't stream it live, so that somebody can go to a trade show and if somebody says, hey, you know what, I want to make Jimi Hendrix my eternal soul, and then suddenly you're bringing Jimi Hendrix to a trade show. No, everything, basically how this works is we have a long questionnaire. You fill out the questionnaire. That the person that you're doing will be checked on basically through our ID system of date of death, so you can't take someone, hey, you know what? I want to take this person. I want to steal their
So people can't
identity,
make
so I'm
like
gonna-
celebrities and stuff
right.
too, right?
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
not gonna we have multiple flags that will come up. But even more so, let's say you want to take somebody who's alive and you want to say that they're dead. Suddenly, now you could go to the bank with them on. Hey, look, here's a person, and
Yeah.
they're on the phone. They're going to approve this. No, it won't happen. We've taken very, very strict security measures on this. We have a blockchain security system that's going to be in place for every user. Everybody, every soul is going to be checked that the person doing it is part of that family. You know, the same way how you have to cancel Social Security when somebody passes. It works very much. I mean, we have an entire legal and security team on board that is making sure that when this thing launches, that those things, because we ask all those questions. Frosty, we ask all the ethical questions as well. You know, what happens? You know, take me. I lose my fiance, right? How many people lose their fiance? And suddenly they want their fiance on camera, but they want them topless, right? We're not going to do that. We keep going back and forth with this, like clicking, you know, an NSFW kind of thing is, you know, but to me, we want this to be a very positive experience. If somebody wants something different, we can custom. There are pieces that we can add in that are custom. That, you know, language. You know, language is a tab that is going to. It's going to be a slider if somebody cursed. You know, because people want to remember them, and you want it to be. You don't want it. You want it to be as close to that person, but at the same time, you want their legacy to be honored as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Well, I think already, I mean, just the things you've gone through, that's a whole list of things, some of which I hadn't even thought about yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's good, you know, because like I said, there's a lot of, I think it's very intriguing, to be honest, but, you know, it's just one of those things where like we're on the frontier of things that we've never had possible of doing before. And so whenever you're taking steps into somewhere we haven't been, there's going to be questions you didn't think to ask, right? I mean,
100%. And then, you know, then you start getting into what the future of this is, because the software alone is going to, so, you know, what are we, 3 years away from this being a hologram, 10 years away from that grandma's a robot? You know, it's just a matter of time, and everything that, you know, that you were talking about in your news segment about where AI is, you know, the people that fear AI have to understand that AI is it's not monolithic, that it's much deeper. And to put it simply, is that the people that are working in AI, they're going to be the people that are going to solve so many of the diseases that we have, because they're not pharmaceutical people. They're tech people. Yeah. Tech people like to disrupt. Tech people like to solve problems, not keep them going. Where the pharmaceutical world is so much into we're going to treat you, the tech world is we're going to cure you. And so when we start getting all that data in and blood, and that we could start creating, you know, a pancreas and things like that through AI that will work, and that we could keep people living longer, and then eventually we're going to take that living longer, be able to take the technology we're doing, put it in like a neurochip, and then suddenly you take somebody with dementia, you take their memories as they still have it, and then eventually you could put the memory back into their brain. And, you know, we're all old enough to remember these crazy science fiction movies from the 80s, early 90s, and this is real. Like, you know, if you watched our sales tape that's on the website,
I have,
and you watch that, and if you watch that think about 1982, you watch that, and that was your opening, you'd be like, oh my God, this is great. This is, and you know, you don't know what's going to happen, but that we could basically restore memory into place in the early 80s, even the 80s. we didn't have smartphones till, the early 2000s. So, nobody thought about this other than science fiction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now we're at the place where, if we're creating real time, if we're able to create real time environments. Now we're doing one person, so it's not like we're going to create a sporting event that you could do a live sporting event, which we've talked about, where you could have the 72 Dolphins play the 85 Bears with no determined outcome. So you could have people betting on that. The amount of processing it would take to do that with the camera angles and everything, we need probably a 40-story building worth of processing right now to do that.
Mm-hmm.
To create that, but it's going to happen because
We need
we see
the
how
hollow
fast
deck.
everything's happening.
The hollow deck from Star Trek.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the things that they were thinking about on Star Trek aren't going to be reality. I mean, we're not going to be able to transport yet, but
That's what I'm waiting for, Lee.
we're all
Get on that,
waiting for
man.
that. The communicator was easy. Transporting's a whole different deal.
So what is your personal hopes and dreams for this app?
I really hope that Eternal Diary, that people see the technology and what the future brings. I think that Eternal Diary right now is much more of a portal for what the technology is going to be able to bring us. At the same time, I love that I could continue these conversations with Robert. It's not my father, but it's his voice, it's his image. I entered the data. So for somebody, when I showed my brother how it works, he was amazed. He was blown away because he hadn't seen any of it.
Oh yeah.
So when you see it for the first time, freaks my son out, a little bit. I have to tell you, but my father would speak to my nephews, to my son, just about every Sunday. He was a big football fan. So, when we tie it into a live feed and information, it doesn't necessarily make the person smarter because you get to choose where the person gets their news. So if they were full-blown liberal, read the New York Times every day, they're not getting their news from Fox News suddenly in this, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Somebody that watched Fox News all the time, not getting their news from the New York Times. So mm-hmm. how people got the news is all going to be part of the questionnaire. So you don't want to fill out this questionnaire like, you're just like hitting dots and not writing. You want to take the time to be very thoughtful in what the legacy of this person was and the information that you want to give them, and the knowledge. If somebody didn't, if somebody loves Shakespeare or they love Poe or they love Van Gogh, whatever it's going to be, how that person lived their life is what you want to be able to share. What were their prized possessions, that they always talked about? That's legacy. Suddenly it's in a box, or it's on somebody's shelf that was in their house forever. I just think that when you take that legacy thing, that it's no longer a photograph, it's somebody telling you about what that meant to them, because we've heard the stories 100 times, 1,000 times in our lifetime from our loved ones.
Okay, this brought up a question for me, Lee. We've looked at it from the perspective of the loved ones who are grieving, and this being a process that they create. What about a person creating this before they pass, like something that they're leaving to their family?
Well, that is an option, but honestly, that's going to be the option. I don't want to build a platform and waiting for somebody to die. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be the ghoul in this and be like, oh, come on, we need 1,000 people to die this week for us. I don't want that. But that legacy is it's on the website. It's going to be available for people. We know that. I live in Florida. I live right next to Boynton Beach, which is the 55 plus capital of the world down here. So those are my peeps of the people that are going to want to do this. And I think that people begin to think about their legacy. Also, I would say this is a 75%, 80% women to men. Men over 50 find this creepy. Women over 50 love this. They want to talk to their dad. They want to talk to their mom. We've had people that tell you to talk to my mom every day. She would call me, tell me what my weather was going to be like, whether I need sunscreen or I need an umbrella. And those are the kinds of conversations that you can continue. And again, when you hear the voice, we want you to be able to approve the image, approve the voice, so that you feel comfortable. We've had issues, as crazy as it may sound, with Boston accents.
Specifically Boston accent.
Yeah, it really is like we've had the Southern accent. New York accent is fine. There's something about this Boston accent that if you're talking for too long a period of time, the voice starts to almost change like a British accent.
Oh, weird.
So to you Bostonians out there, we'll get it right. Don't worry.
That's something that
I'm very open to share where our pitfalls are, because I think it's really important to be able to share those pieces of information with the audience. If they're tech people that they know that this isn't, you get it right the first time.
No, I think that's important, because I think anybody who follows anything tech related realizes there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be bugs. There's going to be things that you're like, we're still working on this, but I would much rather hear like, hey, here's some of the issues we're still trying to fix or come up with fixes for, rather than say that this is a 100% perfect product.
And we had no problem from the very beginning, right? We know in the tech world that just doesn't happen, and that you don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to write the code for this, and you know exactly how it's going to go. And because we believe we're in the very uncharted territory, but we think that we're in the very great place, not in the financial end, but really on the end of technology, that if we could really create this live experience for people, that it's only a matter of time before somebody wants to create this, a live soap opera, or something like that you could have characters. Now, suddenly Hollywood will start to have problems. I mean, I created last year, I wrote a TV series, and I wanted to just shoot the trailer, and my budget kept going up and up and up. We needed actors. I come from a reality background, so suddenly actors, lighting, sound people. So I started to create my characters in AI, and I was able to do the trailer. And I did the trailer, and the funny thing is, as I'm doing the trailer, I'm like, I have no other takes. It's like single take, because you're creating it, and then it's like, okay, do I like this? Do I want to do it again? And eventually we're going to have this environment, which I would love to make my next project, is this multi kind of room setup where you can have multi cameras in this AI environment that you could put your characters in there. You got the dialogue, and suddenly they're having a back and forth, and you can just click which camera angle you want, so you have always consistency. You basically design your room or your setting wherever it is. You paint your walls, you have your pictures on your wall, you design it, and then boom, you throw it into into your canvas, and you can have we got 3 boxes here, we got 4 boxes, 4 different camera angles, and it goes. And that's going to be the technology that we're going to be able to do as real time, as the processing goes. We saw with DeepSeek in China, but NVIDIA in this country is still going to be the processing company. I'm not sure if I truly believe the DeepSeek yet, and whether or not that's going to be, the future. But I think NVIDIA right now is where we're going to be in the chip world. AWS is going to be moving to the full NVIDIA. So AI is going to be, it's here. It's a question of what we could do.
Okay. We actually have a question from Shadow Max real quick. This is actually Shadow Max. This is something I was reading about just the other day, and I have to still get a complete definition of what you're talking about here. But Shadow Max says hallucinations within the language model could be devastating to a grieving person. What is the current rate of hallucinations with the Eternal Diary?
Hallucinations in what the person is, if the person goes off kilter, you mean?
Yeah.
We have not experienced that. What we're seeing is that the average phone call time that is working right now is just about 3 minutes, which we think is the standard phone call that you would have with your parent every day. How you doing? How the kids? And it's not going to. Somebody might extend that out the first time, second time they do it, but as they use it, we're modeling it at around 3 minutes. After that, the processing starts to move, but we haven't seen anything where the voice goes, where suddenly they're telling a whole different story. We've tried to trick the person. And the other thing is, so if I'm with my son and I say, Jake, you want to say hi to Grandpa? Now, Robert can't see us because he's not really there. So what we're working on right now is a voice recognition system, so it knows the person who not only is calling, but the same way Siri or Alexa will recognize a voice that as they do that. So, I mean, somebody said, well, what if you have two people and you're holding up two phones and you have mom talking to dad? I'm like, we haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
We haven't tried having them. And then the other thing, which is somebody asked a question, can I ask Robert when he died? I said, Robert doesn't know he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Robert's alive and well inside his world. You say, when did you die? I'm not dead. I'm here. You're talking to me. He doesn't know he's dead. He doesn't have a death date.
Yeah. So just to go, Shadow Max brought it up in here too, because I was reading a story about this just the other day about ChatGPT, but he brought up deepthink as well, which is, so hallucination is a false or misleading information generated by AI models, often presented as factual, even though it is not. So especially if that information hasn't been put in specifically. So like, for instance, if I was talking to my mom.
To like a live feed. So if somebody is, let's say, a Yankees fan, and they say, hey, Dad, did you watch the Yankees game last night?
Yeah.
Can he pull in false information that the score might be wrong and things like that?
Or say that he's a Red Sox fan, right, which for a Yankees fan might be devastating, right?
Without a doubt. I can tell you that. That's like being a Giants fan and suddenly Dad's a Cowboys fan. That could be like phone being thrown out the window.
Yeah.
I mean, we're putting safeguards in there. Is it going to be 100% perfect? Nothing is 100% perfect. Yeah. So I don't want to say, but the way that we're building, the legacy is going to be accurate. The real-time stuff is, if you read the New York Times at 7 a.m, the story could actually be wrong by 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And so it's whether or not the updated online would be more accurate than the newspaper than you read. So I think that there's going to be a level that we're going to have to watch a lot of that. We think that, we think that there's going to be this large percentage of people that are going to love this, enjoy it, use it for what it is. Are there going to be the people that are going to be try to figure out some nefarious way to do something? It's like that's why banks have security, because people try to steal money from the banks every day. They try to steal, I mean, there's a reason why there's title lock that every morning I wake up to, them trying to sell me title lock because somebody's trying to steal my home title, And so I think that, I truly believe that from that end, we're going to try to keep the live data as accurate as possible. When we're dealing with that many people, we think that, there's going to be issues. There's going to be news and events that are going to change real time. but that happens with us as we have a conversation every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you watch the news, your local news early in the morning, you say it's going to be a beautiful day, and then you don't look again, and then 1 o'clock in the afternoon it's raining.
Yeah.
You say, I hate the weather, man. You know, so I think that that's going to be something, and it's a great question, and it's something that that we try to deal with every day from our technical team to our data collection team that can monitor pieces. If you ask Robert something that he does not know, he will say he doesn't know. It's an honest thing. We don't want to give him knowledge that he didn't have. If you ask him his favorite movie, he'll tell you his favorite movie. If you say, did you see the new Mission Impossible movie? He'll say, no, I didn't. He's not going to tell you, yes, it stars Tom Cruise, and that's it. He's not going to do that.
So this is going to be, so that brings a question here for the technical side of it. Whereas like ChatGPT and DeepThink and all these programs, machine learning programs, search the internet for information. Is there a difference here where with Eternal Diary, it's just going through the information that you provided it, or will it be like
no? You're gonna put your safeguards in there where they get their information from. So there's going to be information. If Robert doesn't go see a movie, he can't tell you what the movie is about.
Okay.
That will.
So there you go. I think that makes up a little bit too there, Shadow Max. So like if I were to and I guess I'll use this example because I had thought about this before. I've lost my mom. So that, if I were to do something like that, that's who I would think of first. Like if I were to do Eternal Diary, I was a mama's boy. So I would love to be able to just hear my mom's voice, say good morning to me, something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be that everything has to be perfect. I can understand the benefit of just being able to have that one moment, that you have throughout the week where you really want to be able to say something to someone who's passed. If that were to be the case, and I were to say, something to that avatar essentially or whatever, and they didn't know the answer or they could remember, that's something I could update on it and be like, oh yeah, like I forgot to put in here that her favorite movie was Thomasine or whatever.
Everything is updatable. So like life, there's nothing that's linear other than time. So our stories, if you're sitting at the breakfast table, you're telling one story from 20 years ago, you could turn and tell a story from a week ago. So we don't live in this linear world of our brain. We're always telling stories. So you can always update to your data files stories of, or if you say, that really wasn't accurate, I remember it differently, you could change that information. So your data is always available to you once you log in. Our login system is very simple. There's an account, a username, and the password. So the account, we'll just use Robert as the example. So if I have a Robert account, my brother has a Robert account, our kids have the Robert account, my son can use mine, but he'll have his own login to that. So whatever his login to that account is will be tied to the data that he wants it to be. So it's very advanced because, and we went through this whole idea of you have 4 people in the car and the car gets T-boned and it gets T-boned on the driver's side. The way that the people on the driver's side remember that event, totally different than the people on the passenger side because the impact was so different. Memories and stories of vacations and things like that are totally different. When my ex-mother-in-law passed away, my ex-wife and her sister remembered childhood totally different, in the way that mom treated them. And and so how you remember somebody is totally different because you have, you could have 40, 50 years of just different environments and different conversations. If you fell off the swing, how your mom fixed your knee, but your sibling didn't know that because their knee wasn't hurt. So how you remember somebody is a very personal experience. It's not,
For sure.
it's not made. And even, when somebody passes and you go to the wake, if you have a shiva call, whatever you're going to do with that, people tell stories, and you sit there and you're like, I didn't know my mom and my dad did that. I didn't, you suddenly learn all these stories about who they were from almost strangers because it was their life.
Everybody
Yeah.
has a different experience with that
Right.
person.
And they may have never talked about this person for your entire adult life. And you're like, who are you? And then suddenly it's like, oh, I went to college with your dad. And, and suddenly it's like, wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. Because I was thinking earlier when you were talking about, kind of having these sub accounts. I have a sister. I'm 7.5 years older than her. And so we kind of have a little bit different viewpoints, like the way we remember my mom or the way we think about my dad, because I remember them I remember them in the 80s, and I remember them when they were pretty young. They were in their 20s still when I have my first memories of them. And for my sister, that's the 30s. And maybe we had a little bit more money by that point in time, and they had become a little bit more mellow. They weren't so young, and they don't remember people coming over and drinking until late at night. You know what I mean? So like the way that you think about things could just be a matter of time too. Just if you have an older or younger sibling, or the way, for instance, I was thinking earlier, the way I would remember my grandfather, I think probably 50% of our, and that's being on the low end, probably 50% of our conversations revolved around baseball. But that's not going to be how my grandmother remembered him. They probably never talked about baseball, right?
Nor your sister, or like you have these certain memories of favorite players, like you probably that you grow up with, and these conversations that live in your brain, that you have the opportunity to share those moments and relive them with that person, is really what right now what we see the app. We're not going to solve every problem. There's a reason why we have Coke and Pepsi. This app is not going to be for everyone, but I think that a lot of people are going to, in the grief side, that are going to find a level of solace on it. On the legacy side, I think a lot of people are going to really look at this as being, something that they can continue on with. And, it's going to look just like a FaceTime call. So it's what we're very used to seeing. And, from the place of where you can, just have that little moment in time for you to hear it again. And, we're pricing it at a very good price. I mean, we had nothing to really compare it to.
Yeah.
We were originally looking at like the DNA companies and things like that, but they have it's a very expensive product, and they want you to just keep renewing and renewing. And after you do it once, like, then I think that novelty is gone once you find out that you're, part Cherokee and part, Irish, you're 5% Irish, like, where'd that come from? But, I think that, so we really had nothing to compare it to. And then we started looking, as crazy as it is, we started looking at the dating sites. We said, why did somebody go on a dating site to go meet somebody? And, and their prices are really crazy. So we said, what's going to be our cost? What's going to be our, cost per acquisition and things like that. And we came up with, right now we're at $59.99 a year. That's it for family membership. And we think that we could, that will be a really good price point. It's also, nobody's going to come in and, works out to be like $89 if you want to pay monthly. Nobody's going to try to compete with us at that number to try to come into this space at a lower price, unless somebody wants to give it away and have it sponsored by somebody, which, if that's the case, then so be it. We want to build this technology to a much greater point. And, we've talked about, bringing this into other realms, not just into this, but into literature, into history. I have another project that I'm working on for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and so if you can interview Ben Franklin
Yeah.
and ask him what life was like in Philadelphia in 1776, there've been enough books written on it that we have that kind of access to be able to do that kind of stuff. So we have the technology to be able to do that in that kind of world. So it's, that we look at the technology that we're creating for Eternal Diary and be able to use it in other platforms. That it's not a one-trick pony kind of platform.
Yeah, it sounds like this project and this app and the technology that's coming that you're creating for it is in some ways like a stepping stone for a whole other world of possibilities.
Yeah, Jenny, 100%. And working in a real-time environment, and AI is really going to be what's going to make this. When you start to see that, and just when we do it, we've been running a couple of tests for a couple of people right now, and when they saw their loved one for the first time and was able to have that mini conversation with them, because we didn't want them to enter all their data, we just wanted to get like a lot of basic data so they could just kind of ask the questions, and they knew birthday, so they filled out a 40 question questionnaire. Ours right now is about 110 questions, which some of it's very deep detail, and we want detail, and you want detail, because the experience is going to be based on how much information you provide.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking earlier, I mean, it's going to be a process. I mean, I would imagine if I were to do that, that would be something that I wouldn't just spend 15 minutes on. I'd probably spend weeks on gathering that information, and then, going through and trying to find old videos, and, maybe even kind of journaling a little bit, and, trying to get all that information saved up to be entered into that.
I think that, and as you're doing that, you really start to, it's a great process for people to do this, because, after somebody passes, what happens? You got a box, you take a couple of mementos, and then suddenly everything gets smaller and smaller over the years. You give away a pocketbook, you give away, a wallet or a ring, or, whatever these mementos were. But the story of how the person got that and why it was meaningful becomes lost over the years. The opportunity that, say, I wore this bracelet, or I got this watch from my father when I graduated college, and suddenly it's no longer about the watch, but it's the story of the watch and what it meant to them, because they told you the story. And so, it's fresh in your mind, because I think that there's a 60-day grieving period that you start to, and then after that, you kind of get back to normal. So if you could kind of harness that when you do it, and kind of remember a lot of the stories and coming out of the death, I think it's a great opportunity to build a legacy of somebody. And most people don't. They go back to work 2 days later, and everybody says, I'm sorry about your mom or your dad or your brother, or your sister, and you're like, thank you, and you kind of go on with your life. But you still have that pain, and who are you going to talk to? You're going to go do a bereavement group. You're going to, so there is the grief factor involved in this is pretty, again, it's not for everybody, but I think that a lot of people that are used to technology now, we have people in their 70s and 80s that are FaceTiming, they're using all this technology. So they're used to it. So, for when we really start to begin, what is, I don't want to use the word normal, because normal is the wrong word, but what's acceptable in what we want to look at and how we want to do that. And again, it's privacy between you and the app. And if you want to do it, you sign up for it. And, some people may say this is creepy, it's hokey, whatever it is, but, we want people to have a very positive experience from the app.
Well, there's two things you just mentioned. One is talking about, the bracelet or whatever, which that happened with me with my mom. She had a lot of rings and stuff she wanted to pass down to the granddaughters and stuff like that. And she would tell me all the time, this ring was so and so,
Yep,
and that
this
ring was
necklace
so and
goes to
so,
this,
and this
and
is
yeah,
this is why I want them to have it because they were
nobody
named after this
remembered.
person.
Yeah.
And I would be like, Mom, you're not going anywhere right now. It's okay, And then when it did happen, now it's like, man, I can't remember who. So I was thinking about, the process of someone being able to set up their own. Maybe if my mom was into it, she could have been like, this ring belonged to your great grandmother, so and so, and like all those things would kind of be built into it. The
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to mention real quick too was the idea of the grief counseling. Because I think to a certain degree, I think that's maybe the thing that's connected with me the most of the benefit of this is just to kind of when you need that moment because those times can be hard. I was one of those people who found out firsthand that like I didn't expect it to hit quite as hard as it did or stay as long as it did. I'm fine. I moved on, but I mean it's been years now, and I still like. There's times where it just hits you, and you're like, man, I really could I just wish I could hear a voice,
And you
And
get
so
that phantom feeling,
yeah.
and when you get it, like that you wake up or you're thinking and you want to pick up the phone, and it could be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and you want to pick up the phone and call that person,
Yeah.
and then you realize they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
And one person that does a grief podcast said to me that we created something that they can never do, which is continue the conversation. Because for some people, they just want to hear the voice one more time.
Yeah.
Or they just want to see the face one more time. Because all they do is they spend weeks, months just thinking about the last conversation that they had. So if you can get somebody a little bit more over the hump, some people may be able to get there, but some people, if you could just give them a little bit of push up to be able to say, I heard the voice again, and and that was enough for me, and that I don't have to do it again. And some people are going to like it. Like I said, women just really, I think that women are far more emotional. Men want to be the hunters and gatherers and be that, they don't want to show that emotion. But I think that, we see it, and I'm not saying men are not going to like it. Men are going to be a little bit more resistant than women.
Overall, yeah. I could see that. I think so. I mean, we see that. I mean, you've entered the weird, team weird here. We're the witching hours. We talk about all the weird stuff. And, Jenny being a medium, being, her specialty. I mean, we see that there's more women in that world than there are men. It doesn't mean that men can't be there, aren't there in large numbers, but it's definitely more women than men.
Yeah.
And that I kind of wanted to take that turn here. We are getting close to, kind of getting close to the end here already, but I wanted to kind of talk to Jenny about that and see, because you are someone who talks to the other side, and you do talk to my mom, and you do, those things are something that happens. So for something like the Eternal Diary and a community like ours, where we have lots of talented people who can talk to the other side and speak with their loved ones on the other side, what's your thoughts on Eternal Diary, and do they serve two different functions for you?
They do.
Because I think they
Yes.
do for me as well.
Because even for me, is someone who I can speak to. We've been talking about your mom a lot. Like, I can have a conversation with your mom. It's not the same.
It's not. Yeah.
It's not the same even for
It's not.
me.
This is. I am not looking to put Jenny out of business.
Yeah.
By no way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
She has her purpose there, and what we're doing is we're not trying to connect to the other side.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it on this side to give people legacy or some level of grief.
Yeah.
What Jenny does is a great thing, because it gives a lot of times people that level of closure that they could get by communicating to the other side.
Yeah, I mean,
We're staying
for
on this
me,
side. We're on.
I'm not I don't hear her voice like I would hear it if she was talking to me, and I don't see her face like I would see it if she was sitting in front of me. So the Eternal Diary would provide something completely different. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times, like when you will do a reading for my mom and when you do readings for all these other wonderful people in Team Weird, a lot of times they have something they want to tell you. And I feel like with the Eternal Diary, there'll be times where I'm wanting to hear something specific from that person. I want to hear, good night or good morning or I love you or those kinds of things. Whereas with a medium and doing mediumship and things like that, oftentimes there's something specific that they want to tell you, and it's not necessarily like to help with your grief or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if when you were, I up until my mom really got bad with dementia, I'd speak to her every morning at 7:00 in the morning, and we had these great, there were short conversations, but it was like, what is she doing on the day? What am I doing on the day? And I think that everybody or a lot of people have those kind of conversations with their mom or their dad, especially you take the last 20 years when we had cell phones and they're in our cars, so we could be talking to them, on Bluetooth and all, the way we communicate is so much different than, than if we go back to when we were kids, just our relationship with our parents as adults when they had cell phones. Now everybody has cell phones and you just get used to very much, having that conversation. So suddenly when that conversation ends because somebody passes, there's a big void there, especially if you spoke to them every morning and you had coffee with them and you're in different cities and things like that, that you lose that. Once you have that void, you say, how do I get that back? How do I replace that time?
Yeah.
So I know we've talked a lot about the different kinds of things that can be put into the app. But for someone who is interested in doing this and making an eternal soul for their loved one, what are the basic things that they should be gathering or keeping track of or finding? What's the big things they should have?
Because voicemails are the easiest way to get somebody's voice. We all have pictures on our phones of our loved one. It's time of period that you want. Like if you want to, like for me, Robert is Robert of more 2017, 2018 than of 2024, just because he I don't want to say deteriorated, but he got old very quickly.
Yeah.
And so the way that we wanted to get all his teeth removed, it was not, his last year was not a fun last year.
No, you want to remember them when they were healthier and happier.
You don't remember that last week in hospice of somebody. You want to remember that good time, the last barbecue when everybody's there gathered around grandma or grandpa. Like those are the memories that you want to emulate on somebody, and you have that option. That's the crazy thing, is that you get to pick and choose the stories, who your loved one was as you saw them. You don't have, like I said, when you write the eulogy for that person, you're telling the story that you want everybody else to know. So that's a story that if you want you to know, because this is your personal adventure with that person. It's not, and if you want your kids or your grandkids to do it and how you want them to remember, if it's the stories that were passed on to them and you're going to do that, then they'll have access to that story. If they have their own stories, they could pick and choose the pieces that they want to go in there. I mean, that's the great thing about this, is it's not, it's not one fits all. It really is. Everybody is different, and everybody has a different legacy, and we have to be able to look at each individual person as an individual story and how they want to tell that story, but at the same time that we're catering to masses. So
Yeah.
It's not, we're not making, couture dresses here that, it's one of a kind, but each one has to be individual to the person with the voice, with the image, and that personal story and how it gets tied back. And we got to do that times, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, eventually if it goes millions, and, I'll never sleep again, but it's okay. I may be the first customer.
Yeah.
So I know you had mentioned earlier that you had started doing this. You started this process. You had worked on it. You turned it into Eternal Diary. I'm not asking for an exact number, but roughly how many Eternal Souls have already been created at this point?
We have 9 right now of people. We have Robert, and we have 8 being tested. And so far, so good. I mean, I have to say that the people that really put the work into this to have, and we're monitoring it the way it goes, and it's people that are very close to me that are the testers, so that they really wanted this. And I mean, whether we're doing 10 or we're scaling up to 100,000 or a million, it's going to work exact. I go back to the same thing as the cameras. If we have, how many people have a Ring doorbell, and we look at it the same, the same kind of thing, because once we get data in there, it should run pretty seamless. I mean, really, our data center is going, that's becoming the toughest part right now. I got to be honest, because we don't know how many people we need in the data center. And I can tell you right now, when you're talking AI, countries like India, Vietnam, the Philippines that had all these, call centers, they're going to be decimated in the next calendar year, because you don't need them anymore, because AI voice could do their job better. And if they can't do the job, because all they're doing is reading prompts, so so you got 500 people going to one escalation person in Dallas that if they can't figure it out, it goes there. It's going to work the same thing. I mean, you're not going to need 500 people sitting in the call center or sitting at home doing this. So when we're looking at that, we actually need people to process. We need people to the AI will do X amount, but we still need people that are going to check the voice. And so I would love to do this in the U.S., but we priced it out, and to do it in any place in the U.S. it's not even close, and that's why everybody has gone overseas.
Yeah,
but we're still going to look at it. Because we got people working from home. They don't have to come to work somewhere. They log in, they go through the data, they make sure it's all right, and it's how long it takes somebody to get from point A to the till it's approved and it goes through, and that's what we're figuring out right now. That's what the next, I think, 101 days looks like.
And so the Eternal Souls themselves, when you're talking about data centers, is this all going to be essentially stored on servers?
Yes, it's all going to be the same way that people. So if you want to save your recordings, that's another option. Same way like you pay for Google Drive. We'll have storage. You could save your conversations if you want. If you don't, if you just want it to be a regular phone call, you could do it. But some people, may say, "Hey, I had this great conversation with, Mom. You got to hear this," and then you could, send them to that video to do that. But the second something leaves the server, that it's their responsibility. We really want to take that seriously. We will make that perfectly clear in the terms. Is that you can't start taking this stuff and making it. It's like you go on a dating site, right? And guy takes pictures of a girl on the dating site and starts showing them to people and then posting them. It's like he took them off the dating site, so it's no longer the dating site's problem. And and believe me, I have my big problems with the dating sites because they do no background checks or anything on that. But that's a different deal. But we want to keep everything between the people, and we want to and the soul using the app. We don't want things going third party anywhere and things like that. But people are going to do it. People are going to be like, "Hey, I spoke to my mom. I'm putting it on TikTok."
Yeah.
They can do that, but we're no longer responsible. So when their brother or sister goes crazy that they put that on TikTok, this conversation, it's between them. And I say that in the nicest way, but we've gone through this on the legal end, that the second that it leaves, once it leaves the server to go to another third party, it's now responsible. The person is 100% responsible for that video.
Is that going to be the same kind of idea when it comes to people who could possibly, I'm just trying to think through the different things that could happen here. I imagine for some people, especially those who are really having a hard time getting through that process, losing a husband or a wife or something like that, where it could become kind of an addictive thing. Is that something that you guys have thought about? And is that kind of the same answer?
No, I think that if somebody is calling and trying to have that conversation with them, and they are getting addicted, because we've had, that has really been one of the big questions, Frosty, that when is enough enough? Is it is somebody trying too hard?
Becoming unhealthy, yeah.
Right. And I have to look at this from an emotional standpoint and also from the business standpoint, that I don't want to be the police on this. Somebody goes into a store, buys a gun, shoots up something. Where's the responsibility on that? Is it the person? And believe me, I have empathy for anybody that wants to do this, but we have to, we still at the same time that we have to look at personal responsibility and what they do. If somebody is grieving and they go to a bar and they have 5 drinks and get in behind the wheel of their car and drive and kill somebody, who's at fault there? Because it's personal responsibility in that. If somebody sees somebody who looks like their wife or looks like their daughter that passed and follows them and stalks them and does something like that, again, it's all personal responsibility, and we have to be able to look at that from every standpoint. And I'm sure Jenny goes through that as well when she's, if somebody keeps coming back and says, I need more, I need more, I need more, that, at some point there might not be more, or you just, that it becomes, very addicting. The first time that Jenny talks to somebody, somebody's relative, and it's spot on, suddenly they're like, oh my God, I got to come back. I need more. So I think, again, I go with personal responsibility, but, I have empathy for anybody that's using this for a grieving module. And, we've talked about having like a grieving hotline if somebody is having that kind of trouble, that we could put that right in there. And those are things that we're talking about to be able to do that. And, the way that we do telemed, there should be a way that if somebody is grieving, that we could partner with those kinds of people. Or, it's Memorial Day. I was going to bring this up at the beginning, but we got into this really quick. We're going to be donating 1,000 subscriptions to Tunnel to Towers for people that have lost first responders, that lost soldiers, that if they want to do this, that we will provide. We're going to do 1,000 of those once we launch.
Awesome.
And we'll have that up and running for them just around Christmas time, so we can make that, as a partnership.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
And not everybody's going to want to do it, but for people that do want to do that,
which is fine.
right?
Yeah.
And they'll distribute it the way that they choose to do that. And we hope that, I believe truly in that, in Frank Silla and Tunnel to Towers. They do great work for people, and we think it's a great way to be able to give back to these people.
Yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Wonderful.
So we only have a few more minutes left, and I've had this idea since we started talking, and I just wanted to throw it out there because even though it's woo-woo and paranormal, but so we know through many years of ghost hunting shows and ghost investigation groups now that that spirits on the other side do know how to use technology to talk to us. So I will be curious to see if that doesn't show up from time to time.
The ghost in the machine.
Yeah, where the spirit finds a way to communicate through.
I think that would be great. And I have my level. People always ask me about. We go through the ethical, we go through the biblical, and then on the paranormal side, what's my belief in the paranormal? And I truly believe in the energy force. When I lost Megan, my fiance, I tell the story about this. We started watching a TV show called The Californians, and we made it to like episode 3, and we stopped watching. And then after she passed, about a couple months later, I started rewatching it. I rewatched that episode, and the craziest thing happened where the video was running in real time, but the audio was going in slow. And I made a video of that. Mm-hmm. And I know, being in TV, that they're together. Audio and video are locked. So if something's traveling at a different speed, you're going to get the spinning pinwheel of death, because you can't read both. So to be able to get that kind of thing. So I'm a true believer in it. And like I said, we're not here to reach the other side. We're trying to keep it on this side.
I'm just wondering if the other side's going to reach out anyway.
If the other side comes, power be. Like I said, ghost in the machine. They want to come. I'm all for it.
That would be really interesting.
Please don't kill my servers.
Don't fry the servers.
The idea that you're
gonna get me at like 4 a.m. on the holiday weekend, and we're gonna go dark.
Don't wake Lee up Lee at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and there's going to be lots of personal details and personal information and privacy issues and all that. But Lee, if there's any way to be able to get that, because I would be really curious to see if that starts to become some kind of semi-regular occurrence where people are like, they said something, I was talking to, Uncle Joe, and he said something that Uncle Joe shouldn't have known. Like he mentioned a daughter that was just born or something.
I definitely think at some point we're going to, it's how smart somebody is on Eternal Diary versus who they were. And that's going to be, I think that's the hardest part is, where is enough? But we want to keep it's not that we want it to be a blanket system, but we want to be able to give them enough information, really, sports, weather, some news. Some people are going to try to push that level, and that's where, that we might be like, I don't know. The person's going to be like, I don't know. I ain't go to the movies. Or, if Grandma made a cheesecake and you say, well, how did your cheesecake compare to Junior's cheesecake in Brooklyn? Grandma's not going to say, well, here's the recipe of mine versus the recipe of Junior's. If Grandma didn't know that, Grandma's not going to know it. Mm-hmm. She's going to be like, I don't know. I never had Junior's cheesecake. So I think that is for us, where is enough of the data? We don't want to make everybody super smart. We want their conversations to be as real. Like I said, sports. And, Frozy talked about his grandfather with baseball. It's like, if he read the paper every day, looked at, the box scores and things like that, new players, then he should know that. Mm-hmm. But, if he was a Red Sox fan and you ask him about the LA Dodgers, if he doesn't know about the LA Dodgers, he shouldn't know about the LA Dodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have come to the end of the night.
Okay.
That
goes quick.
Goes so fast. So tell us where people can find your information so that they are ready to get it when it launches in September.
TheEternalDiary.com. There's a contact form. If you want to contact me, it'll come right to my email. Haters welcome. I love everybody, and my goal is to be as fair as I could be, as honest as I could be. It's not for everybody, and if you're interested in this, just contact me, and we'll get you on the mailing list as we get closer, and we'll definitely be looking for more testers as we go along. So if you're interested, please contact me.
Awesome.
Excellent. That's theeternaldiary.com. We have that pinned at the top of our chat. And if you're listening to this at another time in another place, it'll be listed down in the description down below. So you can go check out the website. I've been there as soon as I got in contact with Lee. I went and checked out the website and watched a video there. So lots of cool stuff for you to check out on the website. It's a pretty big site. You can go and find out a lot of information. So
we got a lot of
check that out.
information on there.
There is a lot of information. Thank you so much, Lee, for coming and talking with us.
It was my pleasure. And, as we get closer to launch, I'll keep you updated on everything.
Sounds great.
That sounds great. And for everyone else listening to us at another time and another place, we will see you all next time.